You're listening to Hollywood Inclusive on the Good Talk Podcast Network.
Coming up today on Hollywood Inclusive.
We do some election catch-up and talk about Kanye West and his stupid blonde hair.
Plus, we have a guest from the Sundance Institute. We are looking forward to introducing you to her right after this.
Hollywood Inclusive.
Hollywood Inclusive.
Hollywood Inclusive. Hear all the voices.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Darren.
Yo, this is Kirk.
Kirk!
Hello.
It's been a very, very long time.
It's been a minute. Yes, we are back after, how long has it been?
5 weeks, 7 weeks, 9 weeks. I'm not sure.
Sorry, Darren.
No apologizing, ladies and gentlemen. This man over here has been busy with his episode of American Crime. That's why we haven't been here with you. But there's good reason for it, and I don't think we've said it yet. So congratulations to you and to all your team. On the WGA nomination.
Thank you.
And the Golden Globe nomination. And I think there was some SAG awards in there well, not awards yet, but nominations for some of the cast.
Yeah, I mean, people like us. So yay. Yay. Keep doing that.
So that's why our little show hasn't had an episode in a little bit, but we're back.
We are back.
And not only are we back, but we have an excellent guest with us today. This is Moira Griffin joining us in our cavernous discotheque of a recording studio. She is an award-winning producer. She's a curator of film festivals and screening series kind of around the world. And she is currently the senior manager of diversity initiatives at the Sundance Institute. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming and joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for braving rain in Los Angeles to get down here. That's
oh man,
and that's saying something.
Yeah.
I'm sure the local news is currently calling it the storm of the century or something like that.
It's gonna rain for like 2 days straight, so you know it's
storm of the millennium. My bad.
Flooding, landslides, all that.
Probably. I mean, I definitely drove through standing water to get here, and it wasn't that far. LA does not drain well. That's not a thing LA does.
At all. Or people don't know how to drive either.
Well,
at all. There's also that.
So, since it's been so long, we have not spoken since the tragic events of November.
What tragic events?
What?
My birthday was in November. Nothing tragic.
Hey, happy birthday, man. We haven't spoken since the election. And when I was trading emails with Kirk earlier this week about what we should talk about, he was kind of like, I don't know how to talk about anything else. And my thought was, well, you probably just need a vent.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I vented for like the last, how long has it been since this man has been elected president?
It's been more than a month now.
Yeah, so that person. I just don't have anything. I don't have anything nice to say.
I can't say his name either. On the other podcast that I co-host, we actually recorded as the election results were coming in.
Sad night.
Yeah, and on the next one, I was talking about some hypothetical and said the actual words President Trump, and it just choked in my throat. And what you gonna do? Not that I'm letting my political opinion show, but I would prefer otherwise, please.
We're all apprentices now.
We all.
Who's getting fired?
We are all getting fired. Yeah. So I wanted to start out the conversation with the first paragraph of an article from Mashable earlier this month. December 2nd, 2016. The first paragraph says, "It says a lot about post-election politics and the traditional caution of Hollywood that when actors in a major movie make a non-controversial statement about the importance of diversity in society, it is cause for wild applause." So I'm just going to let that lay there, and you guys have at it. What are your thoughts when it comes to sort of how we react to something like Trump, what happens, and in particular, how Hollywood reacts, and, how effective is wild applause at something like movies should represent more than one person?
Well, I mean, in one instance, I mean, it's progress. So, I mean, I guess progress should always be applauded, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Like, but now I feel like, you know, more now than ever, representation and actually putting different looking people on the screen will matter more than ever. I mean, and maybe that's just me thinking that entertainment can change things, but we do have a president that's a reality show star, so it's possible that entertainment can change stuff because, you know, part of him being The Apprentice, I think has definitely helped him reach, you know, tons of people.
Become more of a household name than he was before.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. You know, we talk about diversity and inclusion all the time here, and we do it because it is important, and I think that it is important that we continue the discussion. I don't know what that changes or how that, you know, what happens now that this person is president. I don't know, like, I mean, Hollywood pats itself on the back when they do anything good. So, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, this is just another thing. I don't know. I guess I don't know what it changes, or I mean, it's progress. So that's, you know, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna come back to the new Star Wars movie in a later segment today. So I'm not necessarily dwelling on that particular event. I think the tone of what the author is suggesting is, you know, it's the wild applause part. The fact that, like, somebody saying, we should have many kinds of people on our screens, and that this was met with, like, yeah, you said it, as opposed to, like, well, do it, you know?
So is it like, yeah, you said it, from people who didn't say it before Trump was going to be president? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it
possibly? I mean, part of it is the reaction, right? That
right.
Folks who lean one way are you know, frustrated and feeling like their voice isn't heard, and they're scared that their voice is not going to be heard even more, and or, you know, their life could be impacted in who knows what ways, right? There's some fear.
I think it also has a lot to do with the fact that we're in a liberal, you know, sort of environment, quote unquote liberal environment, and they love to have this idea that they're beyond all of things Trump. But the reality is we're still talking about diversity and inclusion with people who consider themselves liberal. So if it's this hard for them, you know, this hard for us to have an industry that is inclusive, that represents a lot of people, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera, as agents, as PR people, as marketing execs, you know, in film, in this industry, I don't understand why they're so surprised that the rest of the country struggles with diversity when they aren't really surrounded by that many diverse people. You know, the country's still 70% white, right? So if you travel across this country, most people don't ever encounter somebody of color. You know, they don't really know, for them, diversity is it's a really frightening thing. You know, they think of themselves as being erased. And, you know, when you're sort of on these two coasts, you sort of believe that, we're the marker. You know, we mean inclusion. We believe in diversity. But they don't really, because they're still struggling with it, right? They're still struggling with things that technically they should already be over, and they should already sort of have, like, advanced in a place where they can explain to others who aren't surrounded by diversity why it's important, and they still can't. So when they're applauding, they always want to applaud, we've made such great change, but when they really go back to their offices, it's still all white.
Do you think, I mean, I think Kirk's right, that Hollywood will pat itself on the back for anything. So part of it is like, yes, we all think that, and now we're all good people. Do you think that, you know, let's say it's the Oscars, right? If you are at the Oscars and someone makes a statement and everybody starts clapping, do you think that we are in so much of a liberal ocean in Hollywood that everybody in the audience is in favor of that? Or do you think that there's plenty of people who are clapping and yet forcing the smile?
I think they want to believe they are in favor of it. I don't think they think they're against diversity. I don't think they think they're against inclusion. But my problem with Oscar So White, even as, you know, great as it was in terms of a movement, well, Oscar So White really was talked so much more about people in front of the camera. It was really about actors, right? Let's break it down. It was about actors. But nobody talked about the fact that who were the hair and makeup people? Who were the costume people? Who were all those production designers, the editors, the visual effects people? All those people looked the same. And except for the fact that if it wasn't for name of the film that won all the technical awards.
Mad Max.
Mad Max. If you looked at all of his keys, they were all women, right? All of his keys were women. How crazy was that? That was probably the only film there that had all female keys. Who, that's an unbelievable thing. But when you look at who all those people were in the end who were nominated, not one of them was a person of color. Not one.
Right.
And so we sort of forget. They think, oh, it's once we have this actor, now we're fine. We're diverse because it's all about the front of the camera. But when you go to those sets, I mean, we've all been on sets. How diverse are those sets, really? How many PAs? How many production designers? How many art department people?
On the show that I worked on, it's very diverse. So I will say that.
But that's a conscious decision, right? By your diverse creator.
Exactly, by my black creator. So it is a very, very conscious decision by my black creator and the gay executive producer.
Exactly.
So, but again, but that's the thing. It's this, like when you say you pat yourself on the back, like to me, you said it. It's like, well, you know what you're supposed to do. You think that you're better than the rest of the country, but we're still we're talking about diversity and inclusion because there's a lack.
Exactly.
So why are we surprised that Middle America doesn't understand half of the shit that's going on when in LA we are still trying to explain to liberals like why it's okay to have more than one black person in the room to speak for, a black character.
Or why are there no Hispanics in major positions when 50% of the city is Hispanic?
Right.
Like that's crazy. That's crazy. There's so many things that are wrong in this industry, and it's a lot of it has to do with liberals sort of believing that they're beyond it all, and that they don't really have that much to work on, and there's just like little pockets of things that they can do and it'll be fixed, but it's still so deeply entrenched. Racism is deeply entrenched in this country, and liberals are not excluded from that.
So you think that a lot of the liberals working in town are in the problem solved camp?
I think that they're in the we can solve this problem and we've have the solutions to solve it. But they don't really put anything in place to actually create real sustainable change.
Yeah.
And I think it's just the reality. We're in institutions that just protect themselves. People hire who they know. It's hard to find somebody who is, who's black or who's Hispanic, who's good. I don't know where to look, but is it really that hard?
Try
is it
any coffee shop in town?
Exactly. and also it's like you look at your friend networks, right? When people say they hire who they know, if they look at their friends usually look like them,
right.
And that's from both sides, right? It can be it's both sides. People are very entrenched in their spaces and in their places. So
you bet. So Middle America, President Trump, what happened? I honestly was hanging out with people who, there were a lot of people who said, Hillary's got this. It's over. Until it wasn't. Were you surprised by the election results?
Yeah. I was not. I was surprised in the thing that Donald Trump is president. Like that is the
It's
surprise.
a weird sentence, right?
It's just like a sentence that you don't say, you don't think you ever are going to have to say.
It was literally a joke on The Simpsons like 10, 15 years ago. They literally, So reconciling the logic of that sentence, it sounds so farcical.
Right, but I'm not surprised that a person who used racism and sexism to gain votes won. Like, I'm not surprised by that. And I think that that's a problem when you talk about, like, liberals. It's like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that this happened in this country. And it's like, where the fuck have you been? Like, what are you talking about? You can't believe. But it's like, we've been saying these things for years and years and years. You're like, but we got a black president. Things are so much better now. No, it's not.
My favorite is when we're a post-racial society and the millennials are just like, oh my God, they're just so post-racial. When so many millennials actually voted for Trump. Like, it's ridiculous. And I think a lot of it to me has to do with people on the coast don't travel to middle America,
Right.
or they want to forget who their family is when they go to Thanksgiving dinner. Like, oh, what do you mean my uncle and my dad and my mother are all Republican? But, oh, they're not. They're still good people, but, well, they still voted for Trump. You know what I mean? So what does that really mean? And are you looking down on them, or are you engaging them? Like, how are we engaging the rest of the country in these kinds of conversations?
Because,
and I don't know where anybody else is from, but
yeah, I mean, I'm from Texas. So,
Yeah, you-
okay, and now our former governor is going to have a place in the cabinet.
Oh, my goodness.
Is the same governor who refused to shake our black president's hand, but I'm supposed to trust this cabinet. I'm supposed to trust this president, and I think that's, and when I sent you the email, like, that's what I was talking about. It's like, all these black people are like, well, we have to give him a chance. No, I do not have to give him a chance. Like, I don't care that Kanye West dyed his hair blonde and got an autographed copy of Time magazine with Donald Trump Hitler on the cover of it. Like, I don't care.
What do you like? Why did that even happen? Why was
because
that a meeting?
Kanye is a lost person. I
Well,
mean,
and
he clearly has mental issues. You know what I mean? And
Right,
maybe
and-
this whole idea of like he thinks he can transcend race, but it's the reality is.
Yeah, I mean, Kanye. This is what. So Kanye West, Jim Brown also went to visit Trump, and then also Pastor Scott, who we've seen with Omarosa several times because they're on his Black Gathering Committee or whatever they're called over there, outreach. That's what it's. And Kanye said, I wanted to meet with Trump today to discuss multicultural issues. These issues include bullying, supporting teachers, modernizing curriculum, and violence in Chicago. And then he says that I think it's important to have a direct line of communication to our future president if we really want change. This dude ain't even vote.
Thank you.
Let's start there. Like, you want a direct line to the president? Like, how about you start by voting? But that's not what you did. You got on stage to your legions of Kanyeezys or whatever y'all are, and like you preach this thing, and it's like you did not vote. Donald Trump marched whatever famous black people were sad enough to not be embarrassed to walk into Trump Towers and take that elevator upstairs, and Kanye West, not surprisingly, was one of those people who dyed his hair, which I know is a troll, to say, oh look, and now I have blonde hair just like Trump. And just
Same bottle.
I'm at the point to where like I don't feel like I can change a racist mind. You know what I'm saying? Me personally, because if you don't like me because I am black, or if you don't like a woman because she's a woman, like I can't change that. Like I cannot change, because to me, racism is a mental illness. Like you are mentally ill if you just don't like somebody based on the color of their skin. So I cannot change you. Like, so there's no reason for me to engage a Donald Trump. There's no reason for me to engage a Tommy Lauren. Like there's no reason to. That's a whole nother thing. Even when she was when she was on the interview, like there's no reason to have this woman out here. You're not gonna change her mind. All she's now is like, now I have not the Blaze and my stupid Facebook people. Now I have a whole bunch of other people who can now listen to the same shit I've been saying for the last 2 to 3 years. And there's no debate. Like there's nothing that I'm gonna debate with Donald Trump. There's nothing that I can debate with those people. Their minds are made up. So the only thing that they're doing is using people like Kanye West and Jim Brown to promote whatever their agenda is. And I don't want to hear anything about, oh well, we've changed. I talked to Donald and he's a good man, and he's like. But nobody ever says exactly what is being told. Like he's gonna do so much stuff for the African. What is he gonna do? Is he gonna pull out another ad in the paper for the next black people who are falsely accused? Like I listen. Like I said, I don't have much nice stuff to say about this entire thing. And and the fact that so many black men are parading themselves for this just pisses me off so much.
I just find it really fascinating that. So many black men, number one. It's fascinating to me. I think there's something really sort of going on there that really hasn't been dissected yet. But also the fact that you're really looking at, it always makes me laugh when Kanye West says, oh, I really want to find out what's going on in Chicago and I'm going to solve that problem. I'm going to Donald Trump to do it. Well, wasn't Chief Keef like on your label? Like, what are you talking about? If you really wanted to solve the problem, like, why are you promoting this guy who's, talking about murdering people on a regular basis? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. You can really start with yourself and start fixing your own city, which is what you can do, which is what your foundation is already supposed to be doing. You don't necessarily need Donald Trump, who really doesn't care about you exactly to do that.
And really who is like, oh, stop and frisk is the best thing ever. So that's what Chicago needs.
Let's militarize the police.
Yeah, like that's definitely going to help. That's definitely going to help us out. And like I said, I think that, and I said this on the day of the election. I think I tweeted this, and it was, it was about, I feel that there's a difference between wanting equality and wanting to be accepted. And I think that people don't want equality for all people, but there are certain people like Kanye West who want acceptance. I want white people to be accepted. I want the power that Donald Trump has.
Exactly.
But that's not equality for everybody, because now you're excluding a whole bunch of other people who don't look like you. Well, you are rich, Kanye West. There are a lot of poor black people in this world who Donald Trump discriminated against for years and years and years. So like, his access is only economic, and that to me says a lot about a lot of these black men, and that they value power and economics over actual like social change and real equality. And I think that's very, very sad.
It's so interesting, because I think, so for me it's also twofold, right? So everything that he said just now is so true, especially when it comes to the Kanye thing in terms of wanting to be accepted by white people. Like, it's run so deep. The whole thing of him not being able to show in Paris, and like, why won't they let me show in Paris? And why am I not respected by the Parisian Well, you could, like, if you really want to build something, you're Kanye West. You have a huge following. Build your own fashion week in Chicago. Completely transform, promote all of these other black designers who also can't show. You're very sort of, people just very limited in what they think access means. But the other thing to me that was really fascinating with the election itself was the amount of white women who actually voted for Trump.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I've been saying, and I will continue to say till the end of all of this, for the next 8 years, because he might actually be president for 8 years.
Kanye did tweet 2024, so he's already planning for Donald Trump to be reelected.
It's one of those things where I can't imagine a situation where Condoleezza Rice is running for president against a white guy, and 53% of black women vote for the white guy. That just won't happen. That would never happen at all. I might not necessarily agree with all of her viewpoints, but she is a sister, and so am I, and I gotta go with her. I gotta believe that in the end, she's gonna have my best interest at heart, even if she doesn't really. I want to believe that. I really want to believe that. And the fact that 53% of white women literally chose, to vote for the most sexist, racist politician of the two, who did not look or have their best interests at heart at all, didn't look like them, didn't care about them, is really, I find that extremely fascinating. Because what is going on with those women in particular, that they decided that they don't care about themselves, they don't care about their bodies, they don't care about their empowerment, they don't care about any of those things.
Yeah.
It's interesting to listen to the reactions, if you follow people on Twitter and social media, and how people in the pundit sphere, is that a word even, how they've responded. And there's been kind of a white response of like, I can't believe it, from the coasts, as you're saying. And then a white response in the middle of hooray. And then the black liberal response, the people of color response, is kind of like, like, yeah, we know America's racist.
Ask natives about Standing Rock, when people are like, aren't you so happy that, don't you know that Standing Rock now everything's going to be fine? And they're like, we've been here before. Right. Like, we've been promised things before.
Right.
That's a battle. Yeah. So, it's kind of interesting to think about. I mentioned this on the other show that, and now I'm quoting an article that I still don't remember the name of the publication, Harvard Business Journal or Harvard Review or Harvard something. And they were talking about the problem with the white people who weren't won over was that amongst the white working class, the perception is that the elites are telling him what to do all the time. The doctors and lawyers and their bosses are all people who tell him what to do, and that Hillary Clinton is so far elite that she's like already been in the White House for 8 years. She's already got a president's last name. She has a whole bunch of degrees, and she represents the establishment and the institutions, and because of that.
But how is Donald Trump not considered elite?
But wait, but this is my thing though, right? Because really, this is the question: is why do white pundits, white people, right, white middle class, coasty liberal people, why are they all blaming the working class white folks and like low, super lower class, poor, extremely poor white folks for Donald Trump? When you actually look at the fact that most white people who have a lot of money or who were like middle class, they all voted for Trump.
Yes.
It was not a problem of working white people voting for him. This is a middle class white problem. I grew up in Ontario, but I also grew up in Michigan. I can tell you right now, Michigan, people were like, oh my God, Michigan, we can't, it's going to go for Hillary. I'm like, Michigan has the most amount of militias than anywhere else in the country. What are you talking about? Detroit is the way it is because of white flight, middle class white people not wanting to be around black people in a city and feeling like they needed to go. They're like, we can't be here. We got to go. We got to be around each other. Those are the people that are the problem. Those are the people that don't want diversity. Those are the people that want to feel like they're holding on to the semblance of power of the 50s where they had something. It's not poor white people who are truly disenfranchised by other white people. Those people are not the problem. It's the middle class white people, it's upper middle class white people, and it's that 1%. Those are the people that are the real problem and that really have been able to manipulate, poor people into believing that they have their best interests at heart.
Well, yeah, but even then you say, and I agree with what you're saying, but I feel that there's like you said, like they believe, but what do they believe? Like Donald Trump literally did not tell the truth for the 99% of the election. So it's like, well, what were you believing? Because all this stuff could be these things could be fact checked, like everything. And it was like, I'll say everything racist, I'll say everything sexist, I'll talk about Mexicans, I'll talk about Muslims, I'll do all these things. And those same people overlooked all that because they said, I want somebody on the outside of government. I don't believe that. Like, they wanted a white male president.
To a certain extent, but don't you think,
the women,
if
as you're saying? Like, yes.
I think we really have to look, I agree with you on that, but I think we really have to look at the fact that people really are suffering. If you look at the amount of jobs that occur, right? I don't know if you guys saw the graph, but they had a graph of the amount of jobs that, Obama has created, right, over the last 8 years. Look at the amount of white collar jobs. There were 8 million white collar jobs created. Blue collar jobs, 80,000. You're talking about people who, I've traveled this country on a regular basis. You see, there's about to be a massive mortgage crisis that's going to hit again because people are losing their homes across this country. They don't have jobs. They don't have the income that they had before. And nobody really could speak to that in a way that they could really understand and really grasp. I think that Hillary is so she was so kind of tight and didn't want to say anything wrong, right. So she didn't say anything really that could break liberal problem. That could break through. No one wants to say anything wrong.
Yeah, it's no one wants to say anything wrong, and everybody's word of. And I feel like at some point people have to say, well, okay, I got to take a little bit of blame in this because I did this wrong.
Exactly.
I overlooked these people, or I did not speak to these issues, or when I had 4 years in office or 8 years in office, there were there were sects of people that I ignored, that I promised things from. And I think that, I remember when it was first coming out, it was like, well, minorities didn't get out and vote. But at the same time, you can't keep expecting a people to come out and vote for you when they look at things and they say, well, what the hell have you done for me in the last 8, 12, 20, 30, 40 years?
Yeah, but how many people, once again, how many minorities are really in this country, right? What are the real statistics of the amount of black and brown people in this country? in the end, we're not 50-50.
Well, right. We're not.
Far from 50-50, right? 2050 is a long way away before anything actually reaches some sort of parity, right? So it's a really long way away. White people still have a large majority of this country. And if you think about the fact that white fragility is a real issue, right? White people don't talk to each other about race because it's not up to us to say, hey, this is your problem. This is how you fix it.
Right.
The Black Lives Matter, blah, blah, blah. We actually need white people to be able to consistently stand up to talk about these issues, to make sure that they're important, to talk to people in these rural areas about what they believe their problem is. Because in the end, if you look at when you can say, you know what, I've lost my job, right? I used to be a construction worker. Now there is an illegal immigrant who's come in, and now they're able to pay them $6 an hour when I was getting an $18 union job. I blame that illegal immigrant, right? I blame that undocumented worker. But what they don't think, and then they say, oh, you know what? Blame that illegal immigrant because they're stealing your job. Nobody says, well, actually, look at the fact. Who you hired them. Right. What about Trump? What about all of those, builders? What about all of those people who are actually creating an environment where you're taking away unions, where you're taking away like good paying jobs, or people who have a high school education are like, I'm 50 years old. I lost my construction job. I lost my manufacturing job. And you're telling me I can get a job in the new economy building solar panels? Like where is that job happening? It doesn't happen here, right? So what do you do with those people? What do you tell them? How do you explain to them? How do you connect to them? And so many liberals, and particularly white liberals, don't do it. They don't connect to them. Because they think that they're above them. I'm above you. You should understand that, you know what? Clean coal is good for you. Well, clean coal helped me lose my job.
Well, and that's
what's the replacement?
That's the second thought of what I was saying earlier, is that the you think you're better than me, right? Is so
definitely
that goes along with the idea of the position that liberal politicians are taking is it comes across as elite, and you don't connect to folks who've lost their jobs with elitism. That's that whole.
You got to tell them the truth. You got to tell them the truth,
right? Because
automation killed your jobs much more than NAFTA did. Right? When you're looking at Trump having that little powwow with all Google and, all those people, I'm like, all of those people are the reason you don't have your job anymore, because technology and, artificial intelligence is about to kill everything. Look at how many truck drivers are going to be out of work when you have self-driving trucks.
It's
3 million.
Hilarious.
3 million people.
I co-host 2 podcasts, and I always assumed that they would be so disparate and so this one on inclusion in the entertainment industry and the other one on society and technology. And we just keep talking about the same stuff on those shows. Right? Literally, we just did a conversation about automation and how work will change. All right, so we've gone on for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys feel any better. I don't.
Yeah.
But
how do we solve the problem?
Well, I think you guys, that there's a strong takeaway in there, is that if you're a Democratic politician listening to this, Nancy Pelosi, I believe, recently said something along the lines of like, we're cool with what we're doing. We want to keep doing what we're doing. And then meanwhile, the Democrats are pretty content to re-up her. Speaking as someone who doesn't quite align with the Democratic Party, but could, if they would, say the right things, even a little, the same thing isn't what we want from you.
Exactly.
Right. It doesn't work. Like it's the thing. It's like the GOP plays dirty, and being nice in this situation, I think, and I don't say being nice but being naive as a politician and as a citizen of this country. Like most liberals and Democrats, they come off naive about, it's like you don't know the country you represent, or your eyes don't see what everybody else
even Barack Obama, who, as far as I'm concerned, is the best president I've had in my lifetime, was pretty damn ineffectual in the face of the Republicans saying, nah, we don't want to. It's our ball. We're going home. Right? And
But was he ineffectual, or was it the fact that he had, if you think about those first 2 years, look at all those Democrats that didn't want to vote for anything. I'm like, if this, like, Republicans are going to vote en masse for each other, they're going to support each other. Right. And even then when you have like all this opposition that was happening, well, where was the Democratic Party to say, hey, you know what, you guys can't just vote, don't stop, you have to vote in the midterms if you want real change to happen, you know, and instead people don't vote, and then they're like, why is it like this? You know, well, you got to vote, you know, period.
All right. We've been going on. We could go on forever. This could be its own podcast. I'm up for it if you guys are. But we need to leave that there for today. But we'd love to hear your opinion. Tweet us. Let us know.
Hey, everybody. We want you to go over to iTunes, search Hollywood Inclusive. Then we want you to subscribe. All you have to do is click a button and then leave a review.
Type a word.
Rate us.
You know what? We would literally be happy with the word good.
Right.
Just type the word good. We just wrote your review for you. But that would help get the word out about this podcast. It helps the internet algorithms know that there's something here to look at. And that's how the internet works nowadays. So pretty please help support us by doing that. If it's too hard to go to the iTunes store and type in, you can go to our website, which maybe that's where you're listening to this right now.
Right.
Click the little iTunes button. Or wherever you listen to this podcast, leave us a review.
Darren makes it easy for you.
We appreciate it. All right, segment 2, interview, shaking off the politics. We went on a little long there, but you can always skip to the segments that are interesting. We put in the show notes the times that each segment starts. And this is the interesting segment. Let's get to know Moira. She is our guest this week. She is the Senior Manager of Diversity Initiatives at the Sundance Institute. And you, my dear, are a worldly individual, if I may say. As a producer, you won the Creative Promise Award at Tribeca. You were previously the VP of Development with Pipe Dream Productions. So as part of that, you attended festivals in Berlin, Cannes, Toronto, Nova Scotia, is that right?
Halifax, yeah.
Atlanta. So all the heck over the place. You were the founding co-director of Rooftop Films screening series in New York and Bali, where you curated a program for Human Rights Conference co-chaired by somebody named Desmond Tutu.
Nice man.
As if that's not impressive. I mean, wow. You developed the Ethiopian Film Initiative with the International Emerging Talent Film Festival in Monaco, because, geez, get around the world. And just to wrap that up, you have degrees in media studies and Japanese studies from the University of Windsor in Ontario.
Watashi wa Kanadajin desu.
Oh my goodness.
The only phrase I have left, you know.
Does it mean I am a citizen of the freaking world?
It means I am Canadian.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know.
I like it. Well, thank you so much for coming to talk to us today.
Thank you.
We greatly appreciate it. We would love to find out about you and your background. And we have a couple of essay questions that we ask everybody. So we'll hit you with those at some point. But for now, we just want to know kind of what got you interested in film and the entertainment industry, and how'd you kind of get involved and get your start?
Wow. Okay, so that's an interesting question. So
it's so open-ended.
It's a longer story than you might expect, but I was pre-med in university. I come from Windsor, Ontario, Detroit, Michigan, so I never really thought of myself as going into film. It just didn't really seem like something possible. But I went to a friend's media studies class first year, and I got into an argument with a professor about representation versus stereotypes. And after the class, he was like, well, you know, what program are you in? Because you're not in this class. And I was like, I'm pre-med, I'm from bio. You know, it's like I never thought of myself other than like a pediatric surgeon. I've been working in, you know, volunteering from like 12, you know, in like hospitals and all that sort of stuff. And so he was like, you really need to think about switching programs. And I was like, well, like to do what? You know, like I never just thought about it. And I realized I'd actually been reading Variety and reading the trade since I was like 10 years old. Always just sort of obsessed with the grosses and really interested in executives and, you know, what that all meant. And I ended up volunteering for the Toronto Film Festival. And I went to go see a midnight screening of Wong Kar-wai's Fallen Angels. And I left that movie saying, I want to help filmmakers make movies like that. And that was it. That was, I
Nice.
told my mom I was switching to become a film producer, and she said, can you just please finish medical school first and then be a filmmaker? And I was like, oh my God, I'd be like 30. Who wants to do that? You know, so that was sort of my journey. I ended up getting an internship with the David Letterman show right before I graduated.
Nice.
Because I wanted to see, I'm from a small city. Can I be competitive? I did radio for a long time, actually.
Okay.
And I got it, you know. And
So did you finish medical school?
I did not.
Okay.
I switched.
Okay.
I switched because I was like, who wants to do that, really? Come on. Why do you want to be a doctor and make all that money and then make your movies? Like, that'd be crazy.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But I got an internship at the Letterman show, and I'd always gone to New York during the summers. I have a lot of family there. And then when I did my internship and I lived in New York, I was like, oh, I'm leaving. So I went back, graduated, and left 2 days later and moved to New York.
Okay. Wow. And once you were in New York, I assume that the city opened its arms up and said, "You're a producer.
Oh my God.
Make your movies.
It was so
Would
amazing.
You like to borrow our cameras?"
My first Oscar, was a little bit harder than I thought, but it was one of those things where I actually ended up working in all facets of the industry. I worked for Filmmaker Magazine. I worked at nonprofits. I started Rooftop Films, and I just kept sort of plugging away and really just wanted to understand how the industry worked. That was really important to me because I came from a place where I didn't have any experience within the industry, but I'd read a lot about it. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to see, like, what does it mean to be a producer? What does it mean to sort of think about film? And honestly, I thought that, oh my God, I'm a Black woman who, loves comic books and sci-fi, but also, really interested in avant-garde indie films but loves a good blockbuster at the same time. And I really want to have like people of color in front of and behind the camera. This is going to be so easy because everybody's just going to see that the cream just rises to the top, and all the work that I'm doing, in developing directors is just going to, make it happen in a second. And what I slowly learned was that the film industry, especially in that time, was not as open to films that had people of color, in particular Black people, in front of and behind the camera that had non-traditional stories. So because of that, and then sort of the financial crisis happening at the same time, I came out to LA and started doing a lot of freelance work and consulting, and ended up at Sundance and sort of putting all the things together, traveling all over the world, starting film programs in Ethiopia, starting things in different places, and just sort of gaining different kinds of experience. It was really important to me to sort of be able to work with filmmakers all over the world, which is really what I love. And I love development. A lot of the projects that I developed, have gone on to do really well. So it's been really important for me to continue that, the thing I love about working at Sundance is, a big part of my job is artist identification. So looking for, artists of color and women to bring into the institute-wide. And I love, identifying people, like finding that, that person who you're like, oh, I know you have it. I know you're talented. I know that there's something there, and having other people believe that too, and really helping them to think about themselves in that way,
Right. Nice. How long have you been in LA?
I've been in LA for 7 years.
Okay.
Ooh, so crazy.
And were you 7 years at the Sundance Institute?
No, I've only been at Sundance for 3 years.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So in that time, have you, I think I used to be a teacher, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a kind of like long slog kind of thing where there are moments in the panning for gold that like keep you going, if that makes sense. And I could imagine your position being something similar where you have kind of victory moments. Have you experienced victory moments, if that makes sense? Or is it rewarding all the time?
Do you just mean in life or in my job?
Well, maybe both. But at Sundance in particular first.
Yeah, I have a really exciting victory moment right now where one of my fellows who have really been sort of nurturing has just got into one of our labs, and that's huge,
Nice.
and I'm really excited about that. And then I have another fellow who, my first fellow that I chose, Erica Watson, who I love, and she's so amazing and super, super talented filmmaker out of Detroit who's in LA. Ended up, from the program that we did, is now a Sony directing fellow, has been, ended up shadowing on American Horror Story. You just sort of it's so exciting when you see filmmakers be recognized for the talent that they are because somebody believed in them and put the connections together.
Yeah.
That's, as you know, is always the hardest part is those connections. And I think one of the things that I've realized that I've sort of built is a really big network of people. And when you're able to sort of connect those people to each other or to somebody who's, a new talent that they might not have heard of, it's very rewarding and it's really exciting. One of my filmmakers out of Ethiopia, she just, after her year, and she went back and finished the film that we helped her do, won at FESPACO, which is the biggest festival in Africa, showed her film in Toronto, went to Rotterdam. We bring filmmakers to Cannes also. And so it's exciting to sort of see, this woman who thought, okay, well, I'm this filmmaker in this country that nobody really cares about, to sort of see her blossom and grow. And now, have her next feature be things that Miramax is interested in. She had meetings with Weinstein and Sony. And it's because she was given an opportunity, given a chance to shine. So I do get excited about that.
Right
stuff.
on.
Well, that's good. All right. I guess then. So how did you get involved with Sundance?
How did I get? Well, it's so funny actually. I had a short film that showed at Sundance. I said I would never go until I could, never going to go until I actually play there.
Nice.
And so I had a short film there, but before then, because I've been a curator for a long time, I've known a lot of the other curators and people there. And so when this job came up, it was hey, you should really consider it. And I did, and it actually was something where, I really don't believe in diversity for diversity's sake.
Right.
And so when I met with everybody, my whole thing was I'm a pretty honest person. I'm going to say this is my truth, and I'm, I don't really care if you don't really like it, and maybe that's a bad thing. But I think it's a good thing too, because I think a lot of us, especially Black people in this industry, aren't honest about some of the challenges. So that's why things don't always move. And I was very honest with them about what it is I wanted to do and what it is that I expected, and I wanted to know whether or not they're really interested, because I said, for me, it was, if you're going to hire me, this means that this is something that you actually care about and are going to do something about.
So maybe talk more about because I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm a white dude. When you say that maybe Black people aren't honest, what does that mean?
I think that when you get into certain positions in this industry, you have to really work not just hard, but you had to sort of shove all those other sort of things and things that you hear and things that you hear in an office basically to the side. You had to say, you know what, I'm going to sort of go in with blinders and just do what I have to do, and I'm going to get where I'm going to go, and I'm going to try to pull people up, but I don't really know how I'm going to do that when I'm still trying to pull myself up. So it's a hard thing in this industry because you don't always, there's punishment that happens with being honest, right? And so you're afraid of the punishment, so you don't really say what you really mean to the person who it really matters to. It takes you a long time to get to that position. You have to be in a pretty, I think, comfortable position, a pretty high position, to be as honest as you need to be, because you need job security, right?
Right.
So it's hard for people sometimes to sort of be as honest as they need to be with the people in power. It's a hard thing to do.
And I think
if you're solo, it's even harder.
Yeah, I think that, I think more people are now, which is why this podcast exists, is that more people are being vocal about it. So then that makes other people okay, so they're talking about it. Now it's okay for me to talk about it. It just takes a couple of brave people first to be okay, I'm going to put myself on a chopping block and say, this stuff is messed up and I don't want to have to deal with this. And then people get in line, and then it becomes a movement, and then change happens. So, you do want that, you want that to continue. But yeah, I agree. I think that, and people are not, and I think that people are not honest in a whole lot of ways in this in this
Right.
in this town.
It's a
Because-
smoke and mirrors town. Smoke and mirrors town.
And a lot of times you don't know what someone thinks of you unless you hear it from you heard it from someone else, or you did. And a lot of it is because of job security. And I thought about that even when I decided to do this podcast with Darren. It's like, well, what can and can I say? And then it comes down to, all right, I'm not gonna say anything that I feel is like going to offend someone in the name of like doing something bad to them. Like anything that I'm talking about, it's about progress, it's about change, and I would hope it's, I'm think in my mind it's positive change. So if you want to sort of reprimand me or discipline me or not work with me because I'm saying something that that you don't like, but that can bring positive change, and we don't need to work together in the first place. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I feel like I'm at the point to where it's like, well, okay, you don't want to work with me because I said that, whoever was racist because they said certain statement. It's like, well, I don't want to work with them. It's like, well, you said it. Like, own it, apologize, and don't say it again. I should not be afraid to call someone out for something that is hurtful to me or to, people who look like me, for fear that I can't get a job. And so if that's the case, then I just feel that we just shouldn't work together. And that's the risk that I take. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, social issues matter to me. Black people matter to me. I matter to me. So I'm not going to be quiet about things that I know need to change in this country or in this industry, It's
a really tough thing. People feel very isolated. They feel very isolated from, and they feel unsupported.
Sure.
So sometimes it feels really difficult to be able to be as honest as you want to be. And people make changes in their own way that isn't always recognized. They do things that you could say are silent. Like their own sort of like silent little way of making change. And then some people honestly don't make change at all. They look. They look like both of us, and you're like, hey, you're going to help me make my movie. And they're like, no, it's like right. You'd be surprised. I think if you look around at a lot of people who, and sometimes actors, sometimes not actors, but, people who have power in this industry, and when they have the opportunity to have a production company, look at who they hire. How diverse is the person that they're hiring to run that company? Right. And then what does that mean? It's amazing to me that, Brad Pitt's company has probably produced more black indie films than any other company. But is it because people are okay with him saying yes to him? Is it that maybe there are other black producers or black actors who tried to do it and people said no because they didn't have the power, or they didn't really think about going and finding the money on their own. There's so many different factors in this industry, especially for me working in independent film. Independent film is a much harder place than sort of Hollywood, right? It's a much harder place.
Sure. Well, so now for your own art, now you're working at the Sundance Institute. Are you finding that you have more time, less time? Are you making more stuff, less stuff?
I think I'm making more stuff in a different way. Coming from development, you're so used to having like, I need 30 projects and we're going to see which one sticks, that sort of thing. I'm much more mindful of what it is I want to do. I also have a partner who is a writer-director who I work with. And so we work together on a lot of projects. Okay. But also just, life is different. I take care of my mother. Things are different now. So it's the quality of the project as opposed to the quantity of the project. Right. So it makes life different. It makes you think about what your own artistic practice is. I've been going through that. What? Do I even want to produce anymore? Do I want to produce other people's things, or am I interested in sort of being like the writer-director who just gets like, hey, take care of me? Like that's how,
Right.
No offense, but that would be nice.
Yeah. No, give some offense because for folks who don't understand what a producer does, because there's plenty of folks who don't, a good producer is standing in the corner doing nothing, but that's because they already did everything and it's working. And yet people kind of look at that and, he's not even doing anything. but that's the person who took care of you.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is exactly right. There's a lot of folks who don't quite get that. So it's good to know. Sorry, I'll get off my producer soapbox for a second.
Love us.
All right, so let's wrap up with the first of our essay questions that we ask everybody. And that is, how do you feel that your background has impacted the stories that you choose to tell?
That's
We do a little tap dance right here after we hit you with the question, just so that you have a moment, because we know that it's the reason we call it an essay question. It's pretty beefy.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually just had we were talking about this earlier this week in terms of like what's your background that drew you. So it's actually kind of fresh in my mind right now, and honestly, it has a lot to do with my own background, like my own personal background. And having a very strong and incredibly strong, influential parent figure in my mother, who came from a wealthy family in South America, and met my dad, who's from Kentucky and Detroit, and crossed the border when she was pregnant, and when she was living in Detroit to make sure that I would be born in Canada, because she was living in Canada and working in Canada. My dad and was sort of living in Detroit but working in Canada, so she wanted to make sure that I was going to be Canadian.
Okay.
So
wait, we're not talking like went into labor and went across the border.
I'm talking about went into labor.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, wow.
Went into labor. Her friend who was with her, mom always had people living with her, and she's always taken care of everybody. And she was like, "You need to drive me across the border so I can like have my baby." And she was like, "I'm not driving you." And this woman was in medical school. She's like, "You need to just go to the hospital down the street."
Right.
And my mom was like, "Well, if you're not driving me, I'm driving myself," and literally drove herself across the border.
Wow.
Yeah. So but
that story alone is going to have so much impact on who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Well beyond your citizenship.
Well beyond my citizenship. I mean, my mother was in her mid-40s when she had me, so she was a grown woman,
Wow.
in a time when, grown women weren't having children. So, I mean, that definitely influenced me. And also she really, instilled, because I went to French school. I was always the only black girl in my school, my grade school, high school, university, one of like 200. She instilled in me at a very early age that I was black, and she told me, don't ever question it. Don't ever think about it. There's no when you look in that mirror, you're black, and that's about it. And whatever anybody says to you, if somebody calls you, chocolate, you say I'm sweet. If somebody calls you nigger, you just keep it moving. And my mother really instilled this sort of strength in myself and my identity, that I am always drawn to culture and identity and understanding what that all means, because she was very strong in her culture and her identity. And my dad was very strong in, being a black American man who, always thought of himself as better than, even though his mother had a grade 6 education, was a sharecropper. It's like coming from that and always knowing who you are. When you think about identity, when you think about culture, when you really are exposed to so many different cultures, as I have been in my lifetime and in my life growing up, you just are so open, and you believe that those stories are important. The importance of that story. I'm a first generation person to a certain extent, and I grew up also, around people who are first generation Italian. I know their story mirrors mine in so many ways, but I also know that person who was first generation Chinese also has a lot of stuff. My friend who was from Japan, but really 4 generations before, who didn't know Japanese and started learning Japanese because I did. You know what I mean? There's all those things where you're like, culture is so important. And you know what? It transcends so many things. And it's all about the story, right? My story is important because it's my story, but that just because it's my story and it's colored with a black face doesn't mean that somebody in Korea can't relate to it. Right? Because in the end, we're all human beings. And that was for me, growing up in this world with someone who taught me to be grounded in myself, right? I didn't have an identity issue growing up around all white people. I didn't feel less than, so I was more open to thinking about my story as being just as important as theirs.
I love when we have a guest on the show who just puts a smile on my face. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
No problem.
We appreciate it. Do you like this podcast? Do you enjoy this podcast? Do you want this podcast to keep going?
Do you love me?
Yeah, exactly. Do you approve? Can you give us some approval and some external validation? We could really use it. And most importantly, if you're a young podcast, the only way to get the word out is iTunes reviews. And that can't come from us. That has to come from you, the listeners. So
go over to iTunes, search Hollywood Inclusive, and subscribe.
Leave a review, let folks know what you think about what we're doing here. All right, segment 3. We were a little long-winded in the first 2, so we decided to just no, not you.
I'm sorry.
It's our faults for choosing to talk politics up top. So we're gonna just close. We always like to close the show on a positive note, and we have 3 articles to share with everyone listening today that are all about increased inclusiveness in this world. The first one is the story of a beauty blogger who has been named by CoverGirl as one of their ambassadors. So this is a woman who will be featured on a Times Square billboard wearing a hijab.
It's beautiful,
right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a thing that's happening, and I think the thing that what I like about each of these 3 stories we're going to talk about today is that there's kind of a little nugget of a moral to the story, a takeaway for us. Her story is basically she was, insecure as she was growing up about the fact that she was always wearing a hijab, and she would, long story short, was always looking around at some of the fashion and beauty blogs, which if you're not familiar with new media is a giant space. And long story short, she said, okay, I'll do it. And I think that's kind of the takeaway, right? Is that like we're always talking about, sometimes people have to be the
first person to go ahead and take
the first person, do it, right? Yeah. And so
she's so beautiful too. She's gorgeous.
Absolutely. And so she, built herself up a big audience on social media, and
CoverGirl came a knocking.
Translated into a job, right? So she broke ground and therefore gets to be a groundbreaker.
So all about the likes. It's all about.
Yeah, right.
Let me tell you, that's our world.
She's a brand ambassador, right? What is her?
Yeah, I don't know if they specifically say brand. I think they actually use the term ambassadors to refer to models, essentially. Right. I'm not sure the degree to which there's more to it than that. But yeah, the next story is also about a model, but this is about a child model, little kid, and it was a little boy, 15 months old.
He's so cute.
Isn't he a cutie? In a headshot that his mom sent in to an agency for Oshkosh Bagosh, the guys who make the little the overalls.
They make the overalls. They make all kids' clothes, right? But
but that's kind of
they're popular. They're known for the overalls.
The thing they're known for, right? Exactly. And he wound up becoming an Oshkosh model. And check this out. This is his photo shoot.
Oh my God. I just love him.
Adorable or what?
Yes.
He's so adorable.
Well, we'll put a link in the show notes. So if you're listening to this somewhere else, go to goodtalknetwork.com and look up.
Pick him up and grab him.
Right? Well, he's so full of joy in this picture. He's you couldn't ask for a more exuberant expression to reflect your brand. So what's interesting about the story here is his mom turned his headshot material in to the agency, and the agency did not pass it on to Oshkosh. Wait, did I even say that?
No, because you hadn't said because
I'm sorry.
Because the kid has Down syndrome.
The kid has Down syndrome. which all of us looking at him know, and I didn't say it, which is kind of cool too that I didn't say it. But anyway, so this is a model with Down syndrome, and the mom turned in the materials, and the agency didn't pass it on, and the reason they gave was, well, the call didn't ask for a special needs child. And so if we're talking about the moral of the story, the call also didn't say not to include a special needs child.
Right,
Exactly.
So what made you decide to for a terrible term, weed out one of the people that you were choosing to send in?
And one of the cutest little babies
And
ever.
good for the mother for saying, kiss my ass.
Well,
Go ahead.
she got proactive. She
Yes.
hopped on social media. So again, we're talking about it's all about the likes. She put together a little campaign, and because of the campaign, Oshkosh came calling. They met with the family and said, you know what, we want to do a photo shoot.
It's great.
I love it.
So it was something that they made happen. So
Go mom.
Exactly. Right? I love how Down syndrome, because of social media, there's so many breakthroughs that are happening in terms of people being in front of the camera and talking about what where they are, and they even have that the reality show with Down syndrome kids. I mean, and adults, and I mean, I love that because my friends, they have a son who has Downs, and
My little cousin is down. Has
Downs.
Downs.
They're they're the most loving people, and it's for us to stigmatize someone else because we think that you're born with an extra chromosome, so therefore you're less than. It's like you're missing out on something really beautiful and somebody who has a really beautiful spirit.
Yep.
So I think this one, has many morals to it, right? But another happy story. And finally, it being the last episode of this show as we exit 2016, Christmas is around the corner, and we have the story of, we've been talking about a Black Santa in the movies. Well, there's also now a Black Santa at the Mall of America.
Watch out, Megyn Kelly. Those Black Santa Claus out there. Hold your purse.
So for the first time, the Mall of America, which, shut down 2 Christmases ago because of a Black Lives Matter protest, they have employed a gentleman out of Texas.
Go Texas.
It's always Texas. What's up with Texas?
He is a retired veteran, and he does some Santa Clausing. So the interesting thing here, I guess the folks at Mall of America went to a Santa Claus convention, which I didn't know that was a thing.
That's a thing. Okay.
But it's essentially like any business, right? There are conventions where people can meet to connect and do business. And this guy was there. They had made a decision to include a Santa of color in their lineup for this year, when they went to the convention, there were 1,000 Santa Clauses there, one of whom was a person of color.
Wow.
So that's an interesting story from several points of view. Again, it's like, well, be the guy, right?
Right.
But also, they just had to make the choice up front that it was something they wanted to do, and now it happens. And I mean, this guy, he's Santa looking, right?
I think the beard looks real too.
That's
a real beard.
He's not half-assing that. That's full Santa.
But I'm so cynical. I'm like, I didn't even really know he was black at first when I first saw that photo. Isn't that terrible? I'm like, he looks like Santa.
Right,
I don't think like he's Black Santa.
Well, and
just looks like Santa to me.
I'll tell you,
he has rosy cheeks.
As the child of a 2.5-year-old, or the father of a 2.5-year-old. And as a future Santa, if I may say so, I'm clearly heading that way. That kids care about, a red suit, and that's what they get, right? So, yeah, you see kids and you learn the degree to which racism is taught.
Right.
You know?
Definitely.
So I hear you when you're looking at him and you're like, oh, I didn't even realize he was black. No, he's Santa.
Exactly.
Santa's magic.
Santa.
And Santa should be able to be anything since he's not real.
Yeah,
but, you know.
Excuse me. It's not that he's not real. It's that he's made of magic.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And magic comes in
sorry,
all
Father.
colors.
Sorry, Dad.
All right. So to wrap up our show, we'll come back to you, Moira, with our second essay question. Are you prepared? Do you have your pencil sharpened?
I'm getting myself ready.
Perfect.
Okay.
The last question is, if you were giving advice to somebody who landed in LA today, who came straight off the bus, and they wanted your career, they wanted to be doing what you're doing today, what advice would you give that person? Either about how to get there the same way you did or how to get there different ways you did. They want to be Moira when they grow up. What should they do?
I would tell them to go back on the bus.
It's interesting how many people are like, don't do it.
Well, actually, no, not don't do it, but go back on the bus, head to LAX, and get on a plane and travel.
Okay.
And just travel the world, because it's the most important thing you can do for yourself, period. That to me would be the way to, if you want to live my life, you know, if you want to get to where I am, be as important as me. I would really, I think it's about traveling the world, you know. I think so many times when people want to tell stories or they want to understand, you know, people don't have any life experience, and you need life experience in order to be a really good storyteller, in order to really understand production, and in order to be a great producer, in order to be a great writer, you have to have life experience. And you might not get that as if you're like land here in LA and you're like, oh, this is like the great place where I'm gonna find all my stories. And so many stories out in the world, and you should go find them. That's what I say.
Right on. Great advice. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. This has been another...
Thank you for having me.
You bet. Come back. This has been another episode of Hollywood Inclusive. We, as always, would love to hear what you think. Please find us on Twitter. I am at Digital Darren.
I am at KirkWright79.
And Moira, how do people find you best on the internet?
I am at Moira Griffin, though I rarely tweet. But I at Moira Griffin is really the best place to do it.
Fantastic.
Engage me so I want to do more tweeting.
And, of course, we are at Good Talk Network. You can also come to our webpage. You can leave a voicemail, 323-686-8255, and we'd be happy to play that as part of the show. If you think we got things right, if you think we got things wrong, if you have Trump opinions or Black Santa opinions, we'll talk to you about that. Let us know what you think. We by all means want to hear from you. So thanks to you both for engaging in the last show of the year. I feel good. I feel good. I started with Trump and I
ended with not talking about.
So thanks.
We got to talk about something else before we get on.
Well, okay. Here's the moral of this story, right? At the end of the day, he's going to assemble his legion of hate mongers, right? But there's also going to be moms out there who fight to make sure that their Down syndrome kid gets as much of a chance as any other kid, right?
Right.
That's the note, is that whatever the powers that be may do, there's always the opportunity to change your world and therefore everybody's world. So, boom.
Oh.
Happiness bomb.
That was so deep.
Wrap that up.
So deep. I just hope she wasn't a Trump supporter. You know, I just have this feeling.
Well, you know what? If she was, so be it. So be it. She nonetheless made the world, part of it anyway, a better place. Why did you ruin my happiness? All right. Thanks, everybody. Good talk.